Hello and welcome to Earth911's Sustainability in Your Ear, the podcast conversation with a changemaker working to accelerate the transition to a sustainable carbon neutral society. I'm your host, Mitch Ratcliffe. Hey, welcome to 2023. We're back from our recording hiatus over the holidays and looking forward to a lot of shows this year. Thanks for joining us. Our homes are the center of our lives and a primary source of CO2 emissions. The Ellen MacArthur Foundation has estimated that 80% of the environmental impact of the way we live can be changed by making better product design decisions. That may make it sound like most of the choices are out of our hands because we have to rely on companies to choose low-impact materials and manufacture responsibly and just take what we can get. But an informed shopper can be a powerful influence. And there's a new language of sustainability emerging that each of us can use to exert pressure on manufacturing and services companies to reduce their environmental impact and help us to reduce our own footprint. Our guests today are the co-creators of the Circular Design Glossary, a guide to understanding the future of furniture design. It was developed by Mebl, Transforming Furniture, in partnership with the Sustainable Furnishing Council. We're going to talk with Michael Hirschhorn, founder and CEO of Mebl, Transforming Furniture, a sustainable circular furniture industry design and educational company. And we're also joined by his colleague, Mona Chun, who is the chief catalyst for program and strategy at Mebl. Mebl, and that's spelled M-E-B-L, uses the root letters for furniture in 32 languages. Who knew? Mona and Michael argue that, quote, the very first step to a circular future is accessible information and awareness, unquote, and ask, how can we transform this throwaway paradigm into a just, regenerative, and sustainable system? Those are great questions to ask when shopping for furniture or any other product or service that each of us has to choose. So let's get better informed about how our home decor and furniture choices impact the environment. You can learn more about the Circular Design Glossary at sustainablefurnishings.org/glossary. That's all one word, Sustainable Furnishings. No dash, no space. And you can learn more about Mebl at Mebl Furniture. That's M-E-B-L furniture.com. No space, no dash, meblfurniture.com. Welcome to the show, Mona and Michael. How are you doing today?
Really great.
Well, thanks for joining. With two guests, it's always a how do you trade off? Mona, how are you doing today?
I'm doing great. Thanks so much for having us on the podcast. We're excited to join you.
Well, it was really interesting to read about the Circular Design Glossary. I spent a lot of time on it and found a bunch of kind of inspiring stuff that I would like to buy or think about buying. How did you all get involved in this, and how long have you been working on the glossary?
Well, the glossary was 10 months in the making. It started with a conversation last year with the VP of Sustainability for a large American furniture company with multiple brands. And she said, with a smile, that she had banned all of her colleagues from using the word circularity, insisting instead that each push through to employ a more specific term such as remanufacturing or regenerative design. And this VP began to see circularity losing its meaning through overuse. And that really helped us think about the importance of shared language in promoting change. So in partnership with the Sustainable Furnishings Council, SFC, we engaged Soma Studio Milano, which is a consultancy based in Milan that specializes in empowering professionals and companies toward the circular economy. And with them, we identified 40 plus terms and paired them with concrete examples from the furniture and furnishing sector. And I should note that we started with the idea that this would be a glossary, but it really evolved into an action guide. We don't want it to sit on the shelf like a referenced dictionary, once in a while for a definition. It is really a roadmap or a blueprint, making to maybe make a starting point next step for companies. That we wanted the sector to be inspired by peers and take action.
Do you imagine this is a living document that you'll continue to evolve? Because obviously we're on a long journey.
Absolutely. And before we even finished the guide, we had 40 more examples of great companies and innovations that we would have loved to add. So definitely we'll be doing more on it.
Now, the glossary is an inspiration for designers, like you just said, people interested in new materials, manufacturing processes, but the consumer ultimately wants to understand what they're buying. How important is it going to be for furniture makers to integrate more of the backstory about the products and the design and the manufacturing processes? And do you see an awareness of the need to tell that story?
Oh, yeah, absolutely. I mean, innovations in sustainable design and manufacturing are happening, but what companies really need to do is pair that with education and storytelling. And in most every industry, consumers, they enter the store or online with very different priorities. The industry needs to present multiple on-ramps. Some consumers lead with sustainability, others lead with price or beauty or functionality, and really satisfying their entry point provides an opportunity to then further educate and convey the sustainability story. And we're seeing this in many different ways through technology and certifications and scorecards that companies are using. And even, these are more technical examples, but we're also seeing simpler, more straightforward messaging from companies as well. And I could give you some specific examples of a technology. For example, companies are testing out technology for tracking the movement of a material along the supply chain from its origin through to its sale. And this can provide the company and a consumer a window into the environmental sustainability practices, labor conditions, manufacturing facilities, and other factors associated with a product. And so Get Creek, for example, which is a manufacturer based in West Virginia, appears on something called the Origin app. It's an online database that consumers can use to trace the derivation of the wood in its product. So a consumer might be just a little bit happier to sit at their dining table in New York or DC, knowing that they're looking at sustainably harvested wood from Appalachia. So we're seeing this through technology and then through certifications like the Global Organic Textiles Standards, where one can see if organic textiles are used, or in categories such as product circularity and water and soil stewardship through cradle-to-cradle certifications. And we're starting to see that consumers are looking for these certifications. Some products might have multiple certifications that they exhibit.
That's exactly the point. Multiple certifications, and there's a lot of context now. And if, for instance, if in e-commerce, go to Patagonia, you can basically interrogate any product. Where was it made? How were the workers treated? What were the environmental impacts and so forth? And how was it shipped? That's a lot of complexity. So I just was a few weeks ago, I was in Georgetown in Washington, D.C., walked into a boutique, and a furniture boutique, and there was a lot of reclaimed and natural wood furniture. But I also realized I didn't know much about what to ask. So when you're looking at that array of provenance information that you just described a moment ago, what would you consider the important questions to ask about a piece of furniture when you are standing there looking at it with a salesperson?
You want me to jump in there, Mona?
Yeah, sure.
I mean, Mitch, I think you're picking up on one of you've mentioned a few times in our brief conversation so far how we're on a long haul here. And I think that interface for, there's the niche or the percentage of customers who are committed to sustainability, and they're going to come in looking for that as the priority or their criteria. But I think transparently, the majority, they're not there yet. And this information the industry has a long way to go to translate this information from the consumer-facing direction such that it's accessible and easy to understand and to digest. So you might walk into that store, that was a boutique, you might walk into a chain store, and some of them have labels that identify some of these factors. I'll go into them in a second. Sometimes as a customer, if you ask the person on duty, the sales representative on duty, they might know. They much more likely might not know unless the store specializes in this arena. Some companies, this is their specialty. It's in their DNA. Their entire branding is, we are a green company.
Mm-hmm.
Websites like our partner for the Sustainable Furnishings Council have an entire listing on their site. But you're going to have to be pretty darn pre-committed to sustainability to search out that site, to search out the directory of customers, of companies, to understand who to buy from.
Absolutely, but it also comes back to the story, and this is what we do with our furniture. It's what we do with everything. And by the way, just by way of background, I was involved in translating technology into everyday conversation 30, 40 years ago. It took a long time, and we're about to begin the journey to being sustainably native, where you do walk into a store and you go, oh, I get it. But the story that I tell about the furniture I bought to my friends is also how we educate the next set of buyers. So
yes.
how do you see taking the glossary and helping not only the designer, but potentially educating even that schlubby salesperson who doesn't really care about anything but just the check at the end of the day, to get people think about the sustainability of their furniture?
Yeah. Well, was funny enough, in the category of, let me tell you a quick story.
Sure.
We, in our 8-year history, originated as a reclaimed furniture retailer, much like it sounds like the boutique you walked into.
Mm-hmm.
And a lot of our experience with the upside and the challenges of this emerged from that experience on 14th Street in Manhattan with a showroom. So I'd say this: take the glossary, the action guide. Its core principles are the principles of the circular economy, mm-hmm. which admittedly, as a starting point, is a framework much more to which the industry is much more accustomed than the average customer. And these principles, to boil it down, we're trying to eliminate waste and pollution. We're trying to keep materials and products in use longer. Like, one of the most sustainable things that a furniture maker can do is make a high quality piece of furniture such mm-hmm. that it's not 2.5 years later that it starts to be shabby, but it's 3 generations later or 5 generations later. And then the third principle is around regeneration of natural ecosystems. The idea that it's not just about furniture that doesn't cause harm. It's about furniture that can actually contribute to the regeneration or the rebuilding of our environment. Mm-hmm. So we wish we have a glossary. It runs from A to Z. We wish we had a term like at aardvark to zoological, but it happens that our first term is a B, biodegradable. And there's an example of, these are materials that break down on their own in a landfill, as opposed to sitting there for hundreds of years. D, design for disassembly. This is the idea that a furniture company would make furniture that is as easy to disassemble as it was, or you were given instructions to assemble it. And where does that come in? That's from a customer point of view. We have an apartment in our building where my nephew was a renter, age 23. He got admitted to law school. The bookcase couldn't fit in the back of his parents' Subaru, right? What did he do? He's said to us, do you want the bookcase? We don't have room for another bookcase. He's like, because I'm just going to leave it on the curb otherwise. And that's where we're at today.
Yeah.
If it were easy for him to disassemble it, as easy as, and make it a flat set of boards, he would have taken it up to law school with him. 2 more quick examples. Remanufacturing. This is a term that glossary. This is the idea that if something that a furniture company itself does not, it starts to commit to extended producer responsibility, a fancy term for that the end of its commitment or ownership of the experience of the furniture doesn't stop the day that it's sold. That they have a commitment to what happens after the end of the useful life to the first owner of that piece of furniture. Or in real life terms, my dining room table, my sofa. It no longer works. I'm moving. It no longer fits. I'm not. I can turn back to that company, which has a commitment from day one to helping me to put it back into the supply chain.
Well, and we've talked a lot about EPR, extended producer responsibility, with previous guests. The thing is, a lot of them are waiting for regulations to tell them to do it, rather than embracing that as a responsibility of manufacturing. And that's, I think, where the glossary is really interesting, because you're telling the industry, we need to own this. in the full responsibility sense rather than sell it and be done with it. And let's talk about a few of the specific terms. And the one that I want to start with is carbon footprint, which is a controversial term. It's maligned, even though it has a very practical application, because it emerged from the fossil fuel industry. How does understanding the full life cycle of a piece of furniture help someone lower their impact? Because it's not just the production-related, shipping-related emissions. It's also what it does in the landfill if it ends up there, generate methane. How do you tell that story? What do you recommend the furniture company communicate?
I can take that. Thinking about, I'm glad you mentioned the full life cycle of a piece of furniture, because it's through this lens that we can see that our sector, while not huge, is having an outsized environmental impact. And one area that we really need to grapple with in particular is the disposal phase in the life cycle and the massive amounts of waste created.
Mm-hmm.
The EPA estimates that Americans disposed of over 12 million tons of furniture in 2018, and 80% of that ended up in landfill. And that's up from approximately 2 million tons in 1960. So that's a lot of bulky old couches we're leaving on the curb now. And I'll just share one other staggering statistic that the EU consumes 10.5 million tons of furniture a year. And at the same time, it throws out 10 million tons of furniture a year. So it's a really significant carbon burden that needs attention. And so in one of our recent webinars, one of our panelists stated that furniture was the original circular product. It used to be durable and passed down from generation to generation. And now much of it ends up in landfill, as these statistics illustrate. So it's important for us to really tell the story and understand the size of the waste problem and rethinking use and disposal, prolonging a product's useful life. It can be a place to start for someone looking to lower their environmental impact. Designers and companies, they need to be thinking with the loop in mind and planning for every step in the life cycle of a product and its component materials. And we're, as you said, we talk about that in the glossary, and we highlight circular concepts to help prompt these design questions and offer inspiration. It's not just a product that a designer is thinking they need to sell, but designing from the very first step with the end in mind. And I'd love to share an example of IKEA. They have an ambitious goal to become a circular business by 2030. And to begin that journey, they audited every single one of their 9,500 products. They gave each product a score on their circular capabilities and created roadmaps for each to eventually become circular. So the roadmaps defined how they could design or redesign every product from the very beginning to be reused, refurbished, remanufactured, and eventually, after all other possibilities have been explored, to be recycled. And then they develop goals also to only use renewable or recycled materials by adapting and finding new sources of materials and developing new materials. And actually, a major piece of the puzzle in the furniture's carbon and ecological footprint is from the materials used. And I think we can get a little bit into that later.
Mona mentions IKEA. It's counterintuitive for maybe many of the listeners of this podcast, because IKEA, in the vast consumer mindset, is often synonymous with fast furniture, like the problem. They have really, as a company, gone out of their way to make the most serious commitment, perhaps in the industry, to complete overhaul of their business for carbon neutrality. And Mona's examples were around the product audits. It extends all the way to the famous cafeterias that IKEA has, that the meatballs become plant-based.
Yeah.
What are the suppliers, their suppliers, not they, but their suppliers' sources of energy? Are they renewable? Mm-hmm. What happens to product use at home? Are their products conducive to LED as opposed to incandescent light bulbs? And it really is the 360. Their climate report and their sustainability report are impressive, almost like outlines of the complexity and completeness of all the facets that a truly carbon neutral committed company needs to track and reduce emissions.
Well, and so you use the phrase carbon neutral, which is another of the key phrases everybody needs to begin to understand. Now, in the examples that you use, for instance, the Mamuni line by Kuros Magsudi, which is a really interesting looking set of furniture, they're using carbon offsets. So effectively, they're still emitting carbon, but they're offering you a way to write it off. That doesn't necessarily overall reduce the amount of carbon being produced. Are we looking at an industry that will always need to use offsets, or do you foresee really true no carbon furniture sometime in our future?
In the example of Kuros Magsudi, yes, the big honest question is true carbon neutrality or not using offsets is a difficult state to achieve. Mm-hmm. But even Kuros, whose company we use to feature to illustrate this question, their key to their achieving neutrality is their commitment to making furniture from locally sourced organic materials. So this is like corn-based plastic. This is sourced FSC certified lumber. This is plant-based resin. So that they also source pre-consumer local content. So it's manufacturer waste that never makes it to the consumer, so that they're continually trying to increase the extent to which they're achieving carbon neutrality through what they do and decrease the extent to which they have to rely on offsets.
Right. That's also points to the need for a lot of new materials. Are there new materials that you both are excited about? I mean, and I can just share a couple of people who've been on the show. We had Forust, which is spelled Forust. They make a 3D printed wood from the sawdust left over from normal lumber operations. Another, Cambion Carbon, uses only trees cut down in the city, which were going to be cut down anyway as a feedstock. What are you excited about when you look at this at the landscape of materials and furniture?
I can take that. It's because it is very exciting, and for a few companies that we've heard from doing very extensive carbon audits, they were surprised to find that the materials in their furniture were the largest contributors to their carbon footprint. Some thought it was, transport or the energy, but it is really the materials. For example, for IKEA, they found that 88% of their carbon footprint was from the materials. So we're really excited about a lot of biomaterials that we highlight in the glossary. Nature's Cast, for example, by Nature's Legacy in the Philippines, they have Nature Cast is an organic material made from rescued agroforest debris held together by a proprietary water-based binder. So the material is biodegradable and recyclable, and can be employed in multiple surfaces.
That's fantastic.
Yeah, and Ecovative is another one that uses mushrooms to create a biomaterial that performs like plastic, but is fully compostable. And they gather parts of plants that cannot be used for food or feed, and they inject them with mushroom tissue. And it's very adaptable to different locations because they can use different types of plants that are local. So that can be sourced locally, and that can be applied to packaging and interior design and furniture. So it could be a chair and the packaging that goes around it when it is shipped.
Well, that's an important point, that thinking not just about the product itself, but what you sent it in is critical to really reducing our overall impact.
Can I build on that a second, Mitch? It's the materials, as Mona's talking about. It's the packaging that you're talking about, but it extends to multiple other facets.
Oh, yeah.
So even energy use, let's say. What does a company do to commit itself? Of course, they're going to first try to go to renewable sources of energy. You've got a company called Vestry, a Norwegian company. Part of their carbon plan is to recapture the heat from the heavy machinery in their own factory is emitted from the powder coating process and reuse that as part of their heating of their own factory. There's a small company in upstate New York called Miles and May. They literally use the scrap wood from their own production process to heat their studios. There's a company in California called Model Number, and they're looking for inventory-free production processes that use like 3D printing technology to do on-demand production in local hubs. So I think the good news and the bad news is that what we've talked about so far in this conversation are amazing developments, but I don't think in an honest assessment, we are in and of the furniture industry. These don't extend beyond the leadership companies. If you go to a major department store, if you go to a major furniture mart, if you go to a major trade show, it's not happening yet. And this is what we do. This is what the Sustainable Furnishings Council and Mebl Transforming Furniture do. We're looking to amplify the effect of the leaders who are they're the change makers in the industry, and to help bring it from the beginning of a long haul to the mainstream of the long haul.
I want to talk more about that, but we're going to take a quick commercial break. We're going to be right back. We're back and continuing the conversation with Michael Hirschhorn and Mona Chun of Mebl, Transforming Furniture, about the circular design glossary. So, Michael, you just made an important point. We really are only at the spear point of this change in the industry. One of the things that is happening across all industries right now is we're rethinking the way that we sell and return and manage stuff. And you see this in technology where everything is virtual, so it's a lot easier. As services, products as a service. But is furniture something that we need to rethink the way we sell and manage in our lives? You talk about product as a service in the glossary, and it's an idea that, like I said, took hold in tech. How can we change the financial relationship with furniture to encourage more sustainability?
So the key to circularity is it challenges traditional models of consumption. Mm-hmm. Product as service, what it's really doing is differentiating between what are the things that we really do genuinely need to own versus what are those to which a customer really actually only requires access, use. Right. Because put simplistically, if you don't own a couch, if you're leasing or renting a couch, you can't throw it away. It's not yours. And it's designed to go back into a loop so that the company that's leasing it has every bit of incentive to keep it clean, keep it in good order, fix it up, and move it on to its next user. So these are really, as you're saying, these are arrangements, Zipcar in cities and college campuses, Rent the Runway for clothing, Airbnb for accommodations. This is the furniture industry version of what you don't use regularly or you want to change frequently does not have to be an ownership model, which lends itself to waste and can become a rental model.
You offer the example of ZZ Driggs. Tell us how that service works.
All right. So ZZ Driggs they have a particular niche, which is classy or higher end. There's a number of firms in this field which are at middle and lower range on the price scale. They offer a wide range of furnishings for rent or for purchase for both commercial and for residential use. Mm-hmm. And key to their business model is they also provide, you might call it hospitality grade service and waste-free delivery, or sometimes called, quote, white glove service. And when you rent from them, if you decide to buy the product you can deduct from the purchase price the accumulated rental costs over a period of time. Okay. And it's their core business model, not secondary or tertiary to their business model, is that after 6 months, your lease is up and it goes right back to them. And their commitment is to the redeployment of that furniture, not the sidelining or disposal of it.
Well, and the other thing that I read into this was that it's about the curation of your living environment. And yes. That's the real value proposition to the consumer is not only is this stuff sustainable, but we can keep your look and feel fresh.
Absolutely.
Is that, and we often think when we talk about sustainability of living with less, which I do think we need to do overall, but we can live better with less when we look at it that way.
I think you hit on the heart of the equation. Like, what's going to make this go mass appeal? Mm-hmm. I don't think if we rely on my quote eco-friendly cousins to move the market, it's never going to move beyond a small number. But if we can tap into what truly drives consumer interest, purchases, investments of money, which is a fashionable apartment, a nice looking place, a durable table now that we have kids, that can withstand the crank. We're tapping into what are the real life motivations of the majority of the range of real life motivations for the majority of consumers of furniture, such that they're not seeing it as a sacrifice. Okay, I've got to go eco. They're seeing it as an advantage. Wow, this is a much easier opportunity to get what I need than traditional models.
But can I also add that it's we're talking about trends that are allowing people to refresh their space regularly because they love to change up their design. But also the U.S. Census says that the average American moves 11.7 times in their lifetime. And so each time they move, their space requirements may change, or, maybe their couch won't fit in the new living room, or it won't even go make it up the narrow staircase in a new building, or their new roommates already have a couch. So it's also about how needs change as families grow or kids leave for college. And so it's not only about how it looks, but it's functionality and needs that change, that this is really going to help.
Now, we've talked a couple of times about end of life and how we can then restore the environment with the waste that can't be reused. You talk about compost board as an example of an end of life contribution to the soil. What is compost board, and how does it end up?
It's. I'm glad we're all chuckling because in the popular mindset, the idea that a piece of furniture is going to end up regenerating the health of the earth is not. It's traditional.
No, that isn't even ending. I mean, that's part of the problem is we think of end of life. We are so locked in our linear consumption that we think of the end of life rather than it is just another step in a cycle.
Yes.
Right.
So how does compost board work?
So this is in our glossary under regenerative design, and regenerating nature, it's a key principle of the circular economy. As the Ellen MacArthur Foundation says, they're a leader in circular economy. If we move to a regenerative model, we begin to emulate natural systems, and there's no waste in nature. When a leaf falls from a tree, it feeds the forest. So for billions of years, natural systems have regenerated themselves, and actually waste is a human invention. So compost board is a material and surface developed by a circular designer in the Netherlands called Rick Mix. The designer uses waste from the nearby agricultural landscape in the Netherlands as feedstock to create furniture. And once the furniture reaches the end of its life, it can be returned to the soil, giving back the nutrients and fibers, regenerating nature, it helps the farmers and ultimately local communities. So it's regenerative in many ways. It's really about restoring and renewing and revitalizing the depleted ecosystem and the communities around where it's made.
Another thing that we often get questions about from our listeners is, and you referred to the sourcing of materials locally, as you just did a moment ago in the glossary, is how far from me should the stuff I buy be sourced? What do you imagine the appropriate geographic footprint for an economically viable, circular, sustainable furniture economy looks like? And recognizing that means there'll be a lot of individual circular economies.
I want to give you two quick what not to do examples to illustrate this. I mentioned that in our first, at Origin, Mebl Transforming Furniture, were a retailer. We were trying to bust out of the box the idea that furniture from reclaimed materials amounts to sort of hip coffee shop barn board tables, that it's a much broader, vaster, and more loose and elegant world. And it can be reuse of wood and plastic and metal. We got an inquiry from the manager of I'm not allowed to name, genuine Canadian rock star living in California, who was wanted to buy one of our bureaus. And I realized that we were in New York, and this piece of furniture was in a warehouse in New York, and it was made by a Los Angeles furniture maker. So
back and forth.
I shipped it to us. It was sitting in our warehouse. Now it was being purchased, and now we are shipping it back to California to a customer who literally probably lived about 33 miles away from the manufacturer. And then on a global scale, you get examples like a customer in northern New Jersey orders a couch. Mm-hmm. Many materials might come from Latin America. These materials are shipped to Vietnam for assembly. Then they're shipped back at the huge volume of an assembled couch with hefty packaging materials. They're shipped back to the U.S. in a ship that lands at, say, Newport News, Virginia, in a port, where they're trucked to a distribution hub in Colorado to then fulfill the order to go to the chain store in Pennsylvania, which then makes the delivery to New Jersey. And that's what we got to get away from. So, quickly, do you want a couple of examples of the good side of the picture?
Yeah, let's hear it. I would love to. We want some good news.
Okay. So Mona mentioned earlier, one of the companies we feature in the glossary is called Gad Creek. They're based in Appalachia in the U.S., and their commitment is to materials from within a 250-mile radius of their plant. And they use, as Mona mentioned, the traceability app to help make that transparent to their customers. This happens to be a region that's rich in ash and cherry and maple and plentiful, beautiful materials. A whole different model is room and board. A line of, not human room and board, say corporation-wide, but a line of room and board is in tap with the urban wood movement. You mentioned Cambium carbon. So their commitment is they salvage wood from a variety, from houses slated for demolition, from trees that are knocked down by lightning or otherwise being removed in urban settings because of disease. And they're using this reused material, purposely assembling it regionally to sell regionally, such that it's hard to put a number to it, but I would say the 250-mile radius would probably be a pretty terrific industry standard.
So, in closing, I want you to share with me what you think that the furniture industry will look like in about 10 years. And based on what you just said, one of the things I wonder about is it feasible to think about a just-in-time furniture economy, or will it always be a matter of designers make something and put it out there somewhere for someone to buy? How do we tighten the cycle? Do you see the industry going that direction?
Tightening the cycle is complicated, but we are definitely seeing some companies doing it. with the materials, for example, and where they're sourcing and where they're selling, and some by creating factories regionally. So we're seeing examples of that happening, as Michael shared with like Gat Creek and Room and Board. In 10 years, I think we talked about materials. I think that is something that we really would love to see in investors backing this, all these great materials that are being experimented with, and really exciting us, like leather made from algae or orange peels and pine needles. So, furniture manufacturers are finding that, as I said, the major source of their carbon emissions are from their material choices. And we extract a significant amount of raw materials each year to create furniture. So we want to see instead rethinking what today's trash is, from fallen trees to discarded fishing nets, and turning those trash into that trash into assets, or replacing the toxic materials with what's being developed today. Maybe sofas made from oyster shells, eggshells, fish skins, coffee grounds. We're seeing a lot of that exciting innovation. But one other thing I wanted to call out, one key aspect of the glossary, is that we believe that a thriving circular economy must prioritize social equity and inclusion, and the health and well-being of all people and communities. So we intentionally included social standards and practices, such as just transition and fair trade and inclusive design, and so on, in our glossary, because we really want to see change in those areas as well.
That's such an impactful and promising statement. Michael, what do you think is going to be surprising about this industry in 10 years?
I think that what is right now completely asystemic, which is the redistribution of furniture beyond an original purchase, is going to become far less friction filled. We mentioned earlier that our core work at Mebl Transforming Furniture, and also for our partners at the Sustainable Furnishings Council, is to work with the change makers, the leaders, and to help them take the next step and to help them inspire and inform their peers in this. We had a conversation yesterday with a vice president at a startup firm that's all about reuse of furniture, an online marketplace for reuse of furniture. And she got very honest with us about the extraordinary number of friction points, meaning that the market is just completely pulling in the other direction between somebody on 32nd Street has a lamp they no longer want and somebody on 64th Street is looking to buy a lamp. If a major manufacturer and retailer like IKEA is making the commitment to be an industry leader by going completely carbon neutral, I think we're going to see a tipping point in the next, in less than 10 years, in which it's the companies that are branded that way are going to be the ones with nonstop rain in California for the last week. The global awareness of the actuality of climate and the way in which everything in this glossary essentially is a step towards remediating a climate problem, that each of these parts add up. I think we're going to see a difference in terms of both what major retailers and manufacturers do, as well as in the tremendous reduction of, quote, friction in the redistribution networks for products that have already been purchased.
I want to thank both of you for spending time with me today. We're going to be offering a link to the glossary in the article that goes with this podcast. Can people sign up for a newsletter and keep track of what you're doing?
You bet. You've just earned our lifelong affection. So there's two websites to go to. One is sustainablefurnishings.org. That's for the Sustainable Furnishings Council. They have a terrific monthly newsletter, websites, resources, working groups. We have the same. We're at Mebl Furniture, MEBL Furniture.com. And we have an e-newsletter that comes out every couple months. Also, we'd love for you to download the glossary. Each of our websites and the glossary themselves are full of links to other incredibly valuable resources. On our website, there's also we have a session called Alternatives to the Curb we ran last year. It's a very hands-on hour about you've got a piece of furniture you no longer want. What are some very local local responses to from Facebook user neighborhood groups to Craigslist to other sites. And big picture, it's the commitment to take a step a day.
Well, thank you so much for spending time with us today.
You got it, Mitch. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Mitch.
Oh, Mitch, our colleague at Scarlet Tap, who is the executive director of the Sustainable Furnishings Council, the latest to get COVID. We just wanted to wish her well. Get well soon, Scarlet. She would have been with us today on this podcast.
Well, I hope she recovers quickly. Having been there a couple of times already, it's no fun. We've been speaking with Michael Hirschhorn and Mona Chun of Mebl, Transforming Furniture, about the Circular Design Glossary. Take the time to download and explore the Circular Design Glossary at sustainablefurnishings.org/glossary, all one word, sustainablefurnishings.org. And you'll find a lot to get inspired about and recreate your home or office decor in a sustainable way. You can also learn more about Mebl, Transforming Furniture, at Mebl Furniture, MEBL Furniture, no space, no dash, meblfurniture.com. Linear economies have locked us in a language that encourages waste. The Circular Design Glossary's focus on what we still call end-of-life disposal instead of circular renewal is much needed. The next time that we buy some furniture, take the time to make sure you understand where it came from, where the components will go when we're done with it, and you don't have to know that in detail, but you need to be able to count on old furniture being recycled or restored by a responsible manufacturer instead of landing in a dump. IKEA's leadership may promise to move many of the major furniture manufacturers in the direction of sustainable design, but it's up to us, the buyers, to reinforce our desire for circular options in furniture. So let's learn about it and ask when you're shopping. I hope you'll take a few minutes to share this show and any of the other 360 plus episodes of Sustainability in Your Ear that we've produced with your friends, family, neighbors, and coworkers. You all folks are the amplifiers that spread these ideas that lead to a less wasteful world. You can tell folks that we are on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, iHeartRadio, Audible, and other fine purveyors of podcast goodness. We'll appreciate your support. I'm Mitch Ratcliffe. We'll be back with another innovator interview soon. In the meantime, take care of yourself, take care of one another, and let's all take care of this beautiful planet of ours. Have a green day.